There are probably more reported sightings of ghosts in the British Isles than anywhere else in the world. According to those who claim to have seen them, they come in all shapes and sizes. Most of them haunt old buildings, repeating the same action over and over again, trapped in time and oblivious to what surrounds them now. Poltergeists are something else. They haunt people. The word poltergeist means noisy spirit, and they make their presence felt. Behind a street in Cardiff, down an alley, the quiet life was about to be shattered.
We started in this building about 15 years ago, repairing all sorts of grass cutting equipment, and later on we started to sell mowers.
John and Pat Matthews, helped by Pat's brother Fred, ran a thriving business here. No real worries, just ordinary, everyday irritations.
Two fellows hanging off of him.
And steam coming out of his ears. You know, that must have been one of the closest matches I've ever seen. It's those blasted kids throwing stones. I'll go see to them.
Tell them I'll throw them on the roof if they do it again.
John went to catch the young vandals red-handed. But there weren't any vandals. The stones seemed to be coming from nowhere.
Pathetic, John. Haven't you got any control over them?
There's nobody out there.
Pull the other one. Come out of thin air, did they?
Baffled. We were baffled that there weren't any kids around here and nobody that could throw stones. We just couldn't understand it. We just couldn't understand where they were coming from.
I thought he was a nutter, to be honest. I thought he was mad. I thought people throwing stones, it's gotta be. Can't be anything else.
And I started to get worried that there was something strange here in this building.
Whatever it was about to move in at Mower Services.
I would see little things flying across the room.
Used to just throw stones and things like ball bearings.
Then suddenly, in this one corner of the shop, it got ice cold. And then there was a terrible smell of burning.
Somebody or something seemed to be playing childish tricks, like hiding keys.
We searched high and low for these keys. It went on for 5-10 minutes or so. Then all of a sudden, these keys came shooting across the floor.
Then money began appearing.
Every morning, it got in turns. We were having it in turns. Each had a £5 or £10 note, and then stuck in the ceiling tile.
Unable to believe that one of them wasn't responsible, the family set up a test.
They said, close the doors, both sides, and we'll see what's happening.
Right, come on then. We're going to settle this once and for all. Hands on the bench. Fingers touching. Right. Come on then. Throw us a stone.
There was no chance of anybody being in that shop except us three.
Hang on. If we're going to do this as a proper test, well, I think we should be writing everything down.
With that, a pen dropped, and then I started saying things like engine parts.
What about a plug?
We knew then that it wasn't one of us. We were looking at each other, our hands were still on the bench.
We were there 2 hours, and I went home and told my wife I just spent the most fascinating couple of hours in my life. I couldn't believe it. We were never really afraid of it. It became part of the family.
We decided that we'd name him, and we called him Pete the Poltergeist.
A poltergeist called Pete? Could there be such a thing? And why was it favouring Mower Services with its attentions? The family needed expert help. They called in David Fontana, a university professor with an interest in the paranormal.
Most of my visits were unannounced, so they didn't know that I was coming at any particular time.
With the element of surprise, the professor would surely get to the bottom of what was really happening.
As I entered the workshop, at that very moment, a stone was thrown across the room and bounced off a piece of machinery. And John was sitting there talking to one of the sales representatives, but there was no question that either of them was involved in this. And John looked up at me and said, "There, see what I mean? He's greeting you." I think I was very pleased, actually, because it's so rare for an investigator to be there when things actually happen. That made me take things very much more seriously than perhaps I otherwise would.
Professor Fontana was so convinced that he filed reports on what he called the responsive poltergeist. He said it possessed both intent and the rudimentary intelligence necessary to accomplish this intent. And he drew diagrams showing how, when objects were thrown into a corner he called the focus of activity, some force catapulted them back.
You don't see the things in midair. You hear them hit the wall and clatter to the ground, you look round and the stone is there, but you don't actually see it in flight. Which, in a sense, rather strengthens the idea that nobody's playing tricks, because if they were, you would see the thing in flight.
With Professor Fontana's reports, the case began to attract attention across Wales.
I wouldn't like people, you know, to get the wrong idea. And we were afraid if we started advertising about it, you know, we would frighten customers away.
But the customers kept coming, and so many people were eyewitnesses that this became one of the biggest poltergeist cases ever. After thieves broke into MAURICE services one night, the insurance assessor who came witnessed it too.
When I was there, I heard the stones or noises coming from the back of the shop. But when I asked them what it was about, I was told, "Oh, that's Pete the Poltergeist." I didn't really believe him. So I opened the door and looked through, and I could see a stone whizzing around on the floor. There was nobody else out there.
Even the Baptist Church, one of two chapels either side of MAURICE services, began to experience poltergeist phenomena.
Before I knew anyone else had problems, one evening I was working up here in the office and stones started hitting the window. I did everything I could to find out what it was. There were no people down there. I went down and looked around. There was nobody there that could throw stones. When I came back upstairs, the whole business continued.
But the minister believes he has an explanation.
As a Christian, I believe we live in a visible and seen world which has a supernatural dimension wrapped around it.
So what might that supernatural dimension be? Maurice Grosse is a leading poltergeist expert. He's been investigating cases for 17 years.
There are two main theories of poltergeist phenomena. One is that some people have the ability to exteriorize a force which affects their physical surroundings without physical means. And the second theory is interference by outside entities. Now, we don't know what these entities are, but sometimes they appear to be spirits of dead people.
Nobody knew what the MAURICE services poltergeist might be until one day Fred says he saw it.
We were fixing this mower on the floor, and I looked up, and there was a tiny boy.
John, don't do anything too violent.
What are you talking about? I'll have to be violent to get this thing off.
No, I don't mean that. Now, do as I say. Don't turn around quickly, but look up gently at the shelf behind you, okay?
What are you talking about?
He was up there, on the shelf. A little boy. It must be Pete.
Half a house brick came hurtling down, and we both panicked with amazement. As you can imagine, he was all grey. No face, but the face was there. It's hard to explain. And all you could see was his hand waving.
From then on, the poltergeist never left Fred alone. Last year, MAURICE services outgrew its old premises and moved to a new industrial estate. Pete the poltergeist didn't follow. He moved in with Fred instead.
And there's countless things that happened at home. Pictures turning in the frames, spoons being thrown up the stairs, pound coins. Oh, it's amazing.
Fred Cook and his wife have moved home to escape their unwanted guest. They took the precaution of breaking a piece of pottery which had kept appearing and disappearing. So far, there's been no sign of anything happening again.